We are in Central Park asking people what they think the Golden Rule is and why it's important.
The Golden Rule?
Yes.
The Golden Rule, wow. The Golden Rule, what is it?
I don't know.
Okay.
The Golden Rule. I've never heard of that. I don't know.
The Golden Rule.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. I don't know it.
I have not heard of the Golden Rule.
You've never heard of the Golden Rule?
I don't remember what it is.
The Golden Rule?
Yes.
Of anything? That's very deep and profound, isn't it?
It's do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Bingo.
Okay, I believe it's the ability to coexist with others by treating the way that we want it to be treated.
The Golden Rule is treat others as you would like to be treated as yourself, correct?
Golden Rule, it's a rule that was actually made by Confucius. And the main issues of the Confucianism is that you should respect the elderly people and actually respect everyone.
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
I believe, what is it, Hillel said?
Yes?
That, when asked to explain the Torah while standing on one leg, said, the Torah says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The rest is commentary. Go learn it.
The Golden Rule, when I was taught in elementary, a simple answer would be treat people the way you treat yourself.
Oh man, that's it. In a divided world full of conflict and mistrust, a grassroots movement has emerged to remind every person on the planet that we share one thing in common: the Golden Rule. Treat others and the planet as you would like to be treated. These words are found in sacred texts of most organized religions throughout history. In 2007, URI Africa and Interfaith Peacebuilding Initiative declared April 5th as Golden Rule Day in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and called upon all citizens of the world to join them in proclaiming the day and living every day according to the teaching of the Golden Rule in order to make our world better and more peaceful for all. Since then, about 700 organizations in 165 countries have joined in proclaiming Golden Rule Day each year. The first 24-hour global webinar celebrating the Golden Rule took place April 5th, 2018. It was organized by 4 international NGOs: the Golden Rule Project, United Religions Initiative, Charter for Compassion, and the Grandmothers Global Healing Movement. More than 30 organizations across the world served as participating partners, organizing events and providing video content for the webcast, which was transmitted live on the goldenruleday.org website and Facebook Live. The international webcast began with World Peace Prayers offered for 193 countries by the Goi Peace Foundation in Japan, an interview with Australia megastar Lior, and the playing of the Compassion Symphony. A discussion on kindness led by Indian pop singer Nemo Patel.
What's the reason why we holding back from being kind? What's the disease? But then I sense we are fine. It'll all happen one small step at a time.
And music and messages from reggae superstar Pt.1.
One God, one aim, one destiny, which means that we're all God's children, brothers and sisters.
In South Africa, college students of different races shared stories of how problems with race remain, but with hard work, society will change. In Monterrey, Mexico, the Charter for Compassion chapter shared how they encourage government, business, schools, media, and families to build a more just and sensitive society to human suffering by tirelessly seeking true peace.
Impulsa a trabajar incansablemente para aliviar el sufrimiento de nuestros semejantes.
Para destronarnos a nosotros mismos del centro de nuestro mundo y poner a otro ahí.
In the United Kingdom, an interview focused on the importance of the Golden Rule to care for the earth. Students from the Middle East, Pakistan, and India shared thoughts on kindness despite differences in religion.
भगवान और अल्लाह में फर्क क्या है?
मेरे ख्याल से वो सारे एक ही है, सिर्फ उनके नाम अलग हैं.
Faith leaders from most of the world's major religions, along with shamans and indigenous spiritual leaders, added their voices to fully demonstrate how the Golden Rule is universal. Ella Gandhi, granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi, shared, "May this day reverberate throughout the world and cause real ripples of change, which must start with us."
In this day and age, if we practice that a little more freely, things might change.
Treat all others as we wish to be treated.
Treat all others
as we wish to be treated ourselves.
Как ты хотел бы, чтобы другие относились к тебе.
This is an image of how the world can be.
We posted drafts of the text for the Compassion Charter online.
We then gathered together people from the 5 different major religions.
Analyzing, writing, critiquing the language there to synthesize all of this into the powerful document that now has unified us all across the globe.
Bring compassion back to the center of religion, and from that point, activate the rest of the world.
The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious,
Religious, spiritual, ethical.
Духовных и этических традиций.
Human beings all over the world must be cared for.
We have information at our fingertips, and that information is pushing us to do something about what's going on around the world.
We are at a critical juncture in history. The environmental crisis, the food crisis, the financial and economic crisis. Something is fundamentally wrong.
We are living in a period of commercial globalization. What we really need is spiritual globalization.
I describe myself as a very optimistic person.
I'm pretty outgoing for the most part.
I would describe myself as
tall, funny.
I think I'm funny. I don't know if other people think I'm funny.
I really love poetry. It's one of my passions.
I'm a happy person. I like to be cheerful.
You know, I'm pretty laid back.
What is the meanest or worst thing anyone's ever called you?
I've been called pathetic, fat, stupid.
my family is pretty intolerant and conservative. My mom told me one time that no one decent would ever love me if I continued to call myself pansexual.
They would call me things just like whitey or cracker or stuff like that because they didn't like me. I acted more feminine, so I'd get the typical faggot and fruit and stuff like that.
A faggot. Over and over again. I can't stand that word.
Being called like a nigger, like I have been for like many times. The owner of the store said like, yo, you nigger, let's get out my store because you're stealing. Me and my friends being gangbangers. I'm not gonna rob you when you walking down the street.
Me and my sister grew up in Shaker and in Garfield, and then we transitioned to Lee and Harvard. And a lot of kids would always say to me, you talk like a white girl. Because I talk proper, that means I talk white. It's just, it never made sense.
And how did that make you feel?
It messes with my self-esteem. It's just really irritating that we go to school together. I have friends just like you. My grades may be better than yours, but you have a problem with the way I speak because I talk like a white girl. That doesn't make sense because I speak proper English. I talk like a white girl.
What is the best thing anyone's ever called you?
The best thing that I've ever been called is strong.
People always call me gifted.
Best thing anyone's called me was extraordinary.
I've had someone tell me that I was like one of the smartest people they know.
No one ever told me that before. I was like, wow, thanks. It just makes me feel happy inside because they're actually seeing what I really am.
The best thing anyone has ever said to me is like called me amazing. I just love that word. Knowing that someone actually thinks that I am amazing makes the whole loneliness and no one likes me thing just disappear.
My teachers called me a hero.
And it was probably the greatest compliment I've ever gotten in my life.
The greatest lesson I've ever learned is empathy. It's only through empathy that people have actually gotten to understand me and be kind to me and show me kindness. Because you can't really show kindness to somebody if you don't see the world through their eyes.
In December 2012, television screens across the world carried the news of yet another horrifying gang rape in Delhi, the capital of the world as it has come to be known. And this time, it was 23-year-old medical student Jyoti Singh who had been gang raped by 6 men on a moving bus. I've just completed a documentary film about her story. And this film is about to go out across the world in 7 countries simultaneously on the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day. So I'm basically at the end of this really long and extremely harrowing journey. And I'm also at the end of my patience as a woman, waiting to be accorded equal value to men, waiting to see an end to this gender-based violence, and waiting to see just laws enacted that recognize women as autonomous and worthy of respect. But I'm at the beginning of a journey of hope. Hope that we are finally on the cusp of change. Hope that the time is now when the world will fully address the question of gender equality. What compelled me to go on this journey and leave my young family, children, for 2 years while I made this film in India? It wasn't so much the horror of the rape itself, as the inspiring and extraordinary protests that erupted across the streets of India's cities in response to this rape. And I knew I had to give everything I had to amplify these determined, these hopeful voices that cried, enough is enough. So as you see and can recall, there was something absolutely momentous about these protests. Unprecedented numbers of ordinary men and women out on the streets, day after day, for over a month, demanding this long overdue conversation. And as you saw, they were braving that December freeze, that ferocious government crackdown for my rights as a woman. And it occurred to me, you know, that India was leading the world by example in these protests. I can't recall in my lifetime another country that has actually done that. So in gratitude to these protesters, I suppose, I gathered my family together and asked their permission to leave them. I told my youngest child, my daughter Maya, 13 years old at the time, that if she needed me, I would stay. But I needed her also to understand that if I didn't go, I would hardly be able to look myself in the mirror again. So I set off on this journey, and my focus was narrow at the start. I was looking at rape, just rape. And I was asking the question, why? Why do men rape? And why does violent rape happen with such alarming regularity? I knew that to get a meaningful answer to the question I'd set off with, I had to go to the source of the action. And I managed to get access to film interviews with convicted rapists in Tihar jail, and amongst them were the rapists of Jyoti Singh. Now, what I learned from these rapists, the deep insight that I got, was that my original question was the wrong one. The answer to my question didn't lie with these rapists themselves, but in a wider sphere, in the patriarchal society and culture which seeds and, I believe, encourages these hate-filled acts.
लड़कियों के लिए बनाया गया घर काम काज अपना घर बार देखे ये थोड़ा रात में डिस्को में घूम रही है बारों में घूम रही है गलत हरकतें कर रहे हैं जरा ऐसे कपड़े पहन के घूम रहे हैं हर कोई शरीफ लड़की होती है रात को 9 बजे मतलब नहीं घूमती है लड़के भी उतने उससे ज़्यादा जिम्मेदार है रेप के लिए ये लड़के हैं उससे ज़्यादा तो आपको 10-20% ये जो सही मिलेंगे
My encounter with these rapists left me feeling as though my soul had been dipped in tar and that there were no cleaning agents in the world that could get rid of that indelible stain. But perhaps even more shocking than the complete self-justification and absolute lack of remorse that these rapists showed were the statements made by their defense lawyers, so-called educated men. Can we please now hear what ML Sharma has to say?
Women's means I immediately put the sex in his eyes. We have the best culture. In our culture, there is no place for a woman.
Just to make sure that you don't make the mistake of thinking that this is just the lone barking of only one rabid dog, let me tell you what the other defense lawyer in the case, A.P. Singh, had to say, and I'll quote this one for you. If my daughter disgraced herself, and by the way, the context here, disgraced herself means, went out to a movie in the evening with a male friend. If my daughter disgraced herself, I would take her to my farmhouse, and in front of my whole family, I would pour petrol on her and set her alight. The truth is, what chilled and depressed me most was my realization that these rapists were not the monsters the media had prepared me for. On the contrary, they were ordinary, apparently normal, and certainly unremarkable men. Now, the details of Jyoti's rape, the pulling out of intestines with bare hands, had led me to expect deranged psychopaths. And I tell you, it would have been so much easier to process this heinous crime if they had been just monsters, just bad apples in a barrel, aberrants of nature. You know, perhaps then, those of us who believe in capital punishment, or that it serves a purpose, and I'm not one of them, would wring their hands with relief when these men are hanged. But for me, their hanging may well mask the real problem, which is that it is us. It is our society and our shared culture of attitudes towards women that is responsible for these men and for their actions. These men are not the disease. These men are the symptoms. These offenses against women are a part of the story, but the real story begins when a woman, a girl, is less welcome than a boy when she's born. When sweets are distributed at the birth of a boy, not of a girl. When a boy is given more nourishment than a girl. When a girl is sent as a domestic slave to her husband's home. You see, if a woman is of no value, if a woman is worth less than a man, then it stands to reason there are going to be men who believe they can do what they want with her. Gender inequality is the problem, and gender equality is the solution, and the only one. Gender inequality is the primary cancer. And rape, trafficking, honor killings, child marriage, acid attacks, these are all the spread. These are the metastases of that cancer. When you look into the blackest recesses of the human heart, as I had to do, you obviously get profoundly depressed and disappointed. And I remember waking up one morning on the shoot, 5 a.m., I was wet from head to toe, I was bathed in sweat and fear, and my heart was just knocking against my ribcage. It was a panic attack. And I phoned home, thinking my husband would answer, but my young daughter Maya answered the phone, and she immediately sensed I was in trouble. And I told her through my tears and my shivering panic, Maya, I've decided to come home. I can't do this. This is too big for me. This is a mountain too high for me to scale. And Maya answered very simply and very calmly and said, Mummy, you can't come home because I and my generation of girls is relying on you. Now, the truth is, they're relying on us. They're relying on all of us, and we must not fail them. So as I move forward now with the campaign that this film was designed to unleash, with hope on my new and hopeful journey, I extend my heart and my hands to you. And I ask you, please join in this change and be agents of it, because we can do it together, hand in hand. Thank you. I'm Leslie Edwin. I'm the CEO and founder of Think Equal. All cycles of violence have the same root cause, the discriminatory mindset, which ascribes lesser or no value to the other. It's mindset that we have to change if we want to stop, prevent violence, and not just plaster over the wounds. And there's only one way to achieve that, through education. Think Equal's mission is to achieve a global system change in education, bringing what we call the missing subject of social and emotional learning as compulsory, and from the earliest years, when neuroscientists tell us that children are still cognitively modifiable. And that window is between 3 and 5 years of age. That is when we have to lay the foundation for the next 80 years. We have to educate our children's hearts, not just their minds, in teaching them experientially values, empathy, gender sensitization, breaking down of stereotypes, emotional literacy, self-regulation, peaceful conflict resolution, social and emotional skills. And we have prepared our program together with thought leaders in the field. And we've started piloting in Sri Lanka, Botswana, Kenya, Argentina, Canada, Indonesia, India, and Sri Lanka has fully committed to being the first Think Equal country in the world, and we are currently preparing with the Sri Lankan government and Ministry of Education to roll out compulsorily from January 2018 across 31,000 schools throughout Sri Lanka. Think Equal is really a very simple solution to a very complex and pervasive problem, but we can't do this alone, of course, and we need your help. That is why we're so grateful to Rainmakers for giving us the opportunity to take part in this accelerator program. We need support with technology, organizational development, and yes, of course, resources. So please, please consider joining hands with us. Thank you.
In our educational system, we're so focused on achievement, tests and scores. Think Equal believes that educating children's heads without educating their hearts is really a serious mistake and ultimately has dire consequences. When we educate our children holistically, teaching them to be in touch emotionally and practice a way to be responsible towards other human beings, within one generation, we're going to see a major shift towards understanding equality, practicing equality, peaceful coexistence. The cycle of violence will be interrupted. There'll be less pain and less loss and discrimination, and we'll start to respect people, and well, then we're having global citizens that will be respectful of women and respectful of other people and compassionate and kind and, of course, empathetic.
The way we're currently educating our kids globally is wildly uneven. I mean, something like 60 million girls don't get any education at all. The first time I saw it, I think I was blown to the back wall of the screening room because it was so upsetting. It's important for a lot of reasons. It's important that women see the sources of whatever that particular anger is that is leveled at them, that they understand it's there. And that's the beginning of understanding how to disengage it from its roots, to pull it out, examine it. And I think that happened to the filmmaker. I think that happened to Leslie Udwin. When she made this film, it made her look for solutions to this. And out of that comes the initiative. This is not about India or Indian culture. It's about a pervasive mindset that runs through many, many parts of the world. And it's, I believe, provoked by all the very recent changes in human history Feminism is a fairly new idea if you look at 40,000 years of how things have evolved. And of course, there's going to be deep resistance to it. Leslie's got a really interesting notion here to get right in early childhood education, to let kids know from the beginning that there's nothing to fear in the other, whether it's another gender, a kid who's from another culture or another color or another religion. We're all in this boat together, and it's a fragile ship, you know? And we really need consensus and mutual understanding to make it. If nations agree to adopt this sort of early education approach to an understanding of equality central to the learning of every child, everything else they learn will be seen in that context. Everything. If we want world peace, if we want understanding between nations, if we want people to come to a table and discuss very, very difficult questions and try to see the viewpoint across the table, you have to have empathy. This Think Equal program is fantastic, and I think everybody should support it. I encourage individual foundations, governments, and parents to support it because I think it's going to move us forward.
There's a need to rethink education. Education for all of our children now is probably the most important form of social investment that we can make. H.G. Wells once said that civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. And I think that's not an exaggeration. We are still a species riven by cultural differences and inequalities. Social and emotional learning to me isn't some see also annex to education. It should be seen right from the beginning as one of the central purposes of education alongside the development of children's other talents and their intellectual capacities, their aesthetic sensibilities and so on. Education has a major role in helping our children to understand and move beyond some of these entrenched cultural attitudes. That's what the Think Equal program is about. The United Nations has now agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals to be fulfilled by 2030, and apart from my work with Think Equal, I've been very involved in the promotion of those goals. And high among them, I think, are issues of equality between different cultures, and particularly between genders. We live in a world of dreadful inequality and injustice towards whole populations of people, and among them, critically among them, are half the world's population of women. Just want to thank Leslie for the leadership she's given in this area. Leslie's tried to create a movement, and not just to create a movement, but to empower it with great materials, and she's energized a lot of people. She's brought her own tremendous energy to the process, and we wouldn't be sitting here but for it, and I think we are a great debt, and it always takes people with a passion, a commitment, energy and determination to make any movement start to turn, and she's doing that. I would expect to see benefits if we get this right, and they won't happen overnight and they won't happen evenly, but it's a question of moving in this direction. That is a big part of what Think Equal is about. It's creating these opportunities equally. So Think Equal is part of that global shift to redress those inequalities, and particularly to provide vivid, usable, practical and tested resources for use in the education of very young children, ones which inform, empower and help to guide the work of teachers, and which will enrich the communities as they do so. And I really think it's a vital part now of reshaping the agenda for education for the 21st century.
And it is lovely to be in a room where
people know the value of kindness and the transformative effect it can have, because what kindness can do on a micro level in our lives and in those immediate lives that we can create that incredible ripple effect in, compassion can do on a macro level, on a national and international level. And the definition of compassion that we are using is feeling empathy for another's predicament and then taking action on the basis of that. And if you think at the moment of all the political problems we have weighing down on us and creating this horrible climate of fear and hate, Brexit, refugee crisis, universal credit, homelessness, they all have one common solution. You know, if we were putting compassion at the center of our political life, none of those seemingly insurmountable problems would exist. So how do we do that? You know, it says on the leaflets that I think most of you have on your chairs that our goal is quite simply to put compassion, empathy and cooperation at the heart of politics. So we're not very ambitious in our goal. But we do think that it is absolutely achievable. I grew up in the 1970s in this country, and there was a consensus that had been built at the end of the Second World War that we should have a safety net and that we should provide for our fellow citizens from the cradle to the grave. And what's happened during the course of my lifetime is that that consensus, that agreement, has gradually been eroded. And it's been eroded by the messages that politicians have given us. And very like the placebo effect, you know, we are very affected by the messages that we're given. So if we are told that there's no problem with the wealthy getting even wealthier because it will eventually trickle down and help other members of society, as we were told at the start of the 1980s, we might think, oh, okay, so that's all right. So we don't need to worry about redistributing wealth because actually we'll all be better off if you know, the gap between rich and poor grows wider, which is actually a lie. The most happy societies in the world are those where there is most equality. And then if we're told that, in fact, there's no such thing as society and that we should all be geographically mobile and not worry about leaving our homes and our family and our support network to find jobs because, in fact, economic growth was the thing that was going to make all of our lives so much better. And then if we're told that those who claim benefits, those who fall upon hard times, you know, haven't fallen upon hard times because they're unlucky, but because they're somehow on the scrounge, they're on the make, they're scroungers. And then you have a government that sets up a benefits cheats hotline, and very clearly those, you know, connections that David was talking about between Viagra and Niagara. You have benefits and you have cheats, and that connection is made in the public psyche. And then probably for me, the most cynical twist is the final one, which is that you don't even need to feel guilty if you're doing fine and other people aren't, because you would be enabling. The language of psychotherapy has been twisted and distorted so that if you stop to help other people, you're being codependent, you're enabling them to become dependent. The best thing you can do for other people is to leave them to pull themselves together and to get off the ground on their own. So you don't even need to feel guilty, and in fact, if you try to help, you're doing something wrong. Well, most of us know in this room that that is not the right way to approach it. And so what we're trying to do is to change the messages that politicians are giving us. And in order to do that, we have to make it legitimate for politicians to talk about compassion. Politicians at the moment have a very hard time if they talk about well-being or kindness or compassion, because they're seen as kind of soft things, you know, all very well, but quite kind of woolly-minded and yet just not very effective, not living in the real world. You know, the people who live in the real world talk about performance indicators and they talk about economic results and economic growth, but talk about compassion and you're dismissed as being not very practical. And this, of course, ignores all the research which shows us that we will all be much, much happier if we do live with greater levels of kindness and compassion. So the campaign was launched earlier this year. We had a conference in Oxford in October where we gathered together academics and specialists in compassion and kindness and activism. And we've come up with a roadmap for the campaign. And the first thing that we're doing is gathering together as many MPs from different parties as we can. And since that conference in October, when we set that as a goal, we now have MPs from all the 5 political parties that we were hoping to get support from. And they are contacting us on a regular basis, wanting to know how they can join the campaign and support it. And the second thing we're doing is working on a kind of legislative test. So rather like you have the kite mark for safety, you have a stamp that you can give products so that you know as a consumer that they're safe. We want to have a similar mark that we can give legislation so we know whether or not it really is compassionate. And, this is a conversation that we're having now that we'd love all of you to feed into, but there are a couple of things that we know would be criteria for legislation to qualify, one of which is that it can't leave future generations worse off. And if no legislation is allowed to leave future generations worse off, then we can start to solve climate change. The other criteria is that it can't leave the most vulnerable members of society worse off. I don't know how many of you saw the article in today's Guardian. We have 4 million working families in this country living in poverty. We have 1 in 200 people in this country experiencing homelessness. And this is on our watch. And it's very easy when you read those articles to feel powerless and to feel hopeless and turn away. There's nothing we can do. But it's absolutely not the case. All of us have agency. So I'm very grateful to Mark for inviting me along and letting me put these leaflets, and for those volunteers who put the leaflets on your chairs. But what I would love is if you could do 2 things if you support our goals. One is either to fill out your details and leave it at the back or on the chair for me, and then we will sign you up to our mailing list, and we will sign you up as a supporter. And the other is if you want instead to go online when you're at home and sign up on our website, which is compassionpolitics.com. If you're on social media, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, because the more we have, the more leverage we have. When politicians know that they're backed by tens of thousands and hopefully hundreds of thousands of people, they will be listened to. When broadcasters know that when we talk about compassion, we're not doing it from the side streams, we're doing it for the mainstream, that will make a huge difference. So if as you leave or when you get home tonight, you could sign up on our website. And the second thing is ask 2 other people to do the same thing. We would be incredibly grateful. And thank you so much for your time and for inviting me to speak.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Kate Sheehan Roach. Very happy to be here with the Interfaith Amigos, celebrating our 2nd Golden Rule Day together. We came together last year, along with the United Religions Initiative, to look at the Golden Rule and why is it not the golden reality? How can we make the Golden Rule become the golden reality? And across the board, Rabbi Ted Falcon, Pastor Don McKenzie, and Imam Jamal Rahman all saw the need for deep inner transformation, that we can't just will ourselves to live according to the golden rule. We really need to be changed by love. So all 3 of the Interfaith Amigos have come together this year with practices, with a seamless, unified Interfaith Amigos meditation to help us really be transformed by love from each of the traditions they represent, from the deep relationship they share. They've been working together for many years, traveling and writing books and teaching on the unifying power of the Abrahamic faiths, that these things that divide us are nothing compared to the things that unite us. So in the spirit of Golden Rule Day, I'm so excited to be back with the Interfaith Amigos, hosted by Contemplative Life, and really thrilled to just go straight into the practice, to spend this time together practicing. We invite you to join us in these meditations. Settle down, take a few deep breaths, and just allow the Interfaith Amigos to guide you into a Golden Rule Day meditation on love. So we'll begin with Rabbi Ted Falcon from the Jewish tradition.
And we encourage you to find as comfortable a position as possible and take a few gentle breaths. We know that the golden rule translates into the golden reality in the arms of love. And so we focus our meditation on expanding the love that yearns to awaken through each and every one of us, that speaks the highest values within each of our traditions. From the Jewish tradition, we begin with verses from Torah. Ahava is the Hebrew word for love. You can take that word as a gentle mantra. Ahava, ahava. So that as you close your eyes or simply gently attend to the screen before you, you can awaken to that ahava, to that expansive vibration of love, always within each and every one of us. Ahava. When asked the most important teaching of Torah, several of the greatest Jewish spiritual teachers of the ages pointed to a verse in the book of Leviticus, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. As we enter more deeply into a state of calmness, it becomes clear that we can only love another to the extent we are able to love ourselves. In some ways, we are always loving another according to the level at which we awaken to love for ourselves. Ahava, an opening, a consciousness of deep acceptance. Attending to the body and simply accepting everything that's found in the body, whatever sensations, whatever feelings. Attending to the mind and simply allowing the mind to do what it does without needing anything to be different than it is right now. Ahava. Awakening through the gentle breath to an ever deepening embrace of acceptance, an acceptance of self that allows us to embrace the other with that same embrace. For we love others as we are able to love ourselves. And we expand that love of self and of other to embrace a universe. Just as the verse from Deuteronomy supports us, V'ahavta Et Adonai Elohecha, when we awaken to the love, embracing us, embracing the other, we realize a love embracing it all. However we refer to ultimate reality, to universal presence, we open our hearts to the unconditional love with which we are graced. And we respond with a love with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our moreness, with all of us that is evolving, expanding in every moment. Ahava. For a few moments now, take ahava into yourself. In moments of silence, allow yourself to be embraced, that you might embrace others and a universe in a profound, loving acceptance. Ahava. A love that expands as we love ourselves and love our neighbors. A love that expands as we open to the universal source of all life with our whole heart, with our whole soul, and with all the energy, all the consciousness, all the awareness of the moment. Ahava. Our journey into the awakening of a more profound universal love continues now with wisdom from the Christian tradition with Pastor Don McKenzie.
So now today continuing this mode of meditation, breathing in, breathing out, we invite you to focus on these verses from the Christian tradition. The first one from the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus is reported to have said, "But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." And the second verse from the Gospel of John, where Jesus is instructing his disciples toward the end of his ministry, he says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Breathing in and breathing out. Notice that the kind of love that is suggested in these verses requires unconditional love, loving without conditions. As Jesus proceeded in his ministry, he brought the Hebrew term chesed, translated in English as steadfast love or even loving kindness, to a place where he characterized it as unconditional love, loving without conditions. So continue now, breathing in and breathing out. And as you do so, if you drift from your center, use the phrase, come back to love. Use the phrase, come back to love. And as you do that, remember, there is only one love, only one being to which love can open us. Come back to love, breathing in and breathing out for a few moments in silence. Come back to love. Come back to love. Notice now as you breathe how your heart can open, making room for the lives and concerns of other people, and the being itself, God. Come back to love. Come back to love. Come back to your center, where you will find love with its transforming power. And you can notice that eventually, through your practice, you may no longer desire to be able to love unconditionally. Instead, your practiced center creates a way of being that is framed by loving without conditions. Come back to love. So now we continue our meditation with Imam Jamal with compassion from the Islamic tradition.
So as my brother said, we shall continue with this beautiful divine vibration of love through what Muslims call the Basmallah. This is the invocation that opens virtually every single chapter of the Quran. The words are Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, meaning in the name of God, boundlessly compassionate, infinitely merciful. There's a beautiful story where a Bedouin once asked the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, what is the secret? What is the meaning of this Basmallah? How can it be bestowed upon me? And the Prophet famously replied, this is the secret to life. Be loving and compassionate towards yourself and loving and compassionate towards others. And so now, as you're relaxed, I shall request you please to focus your attention on your nostril and simply be present with your breath. As you inhale and as you exhale, as you breathe in and as you breathe out, just this much. And if your attention strays, compassionately bring it back to nostril. And now, let go of this. And this time, please bring your attention to rest on your physical heart. Our heart has been yearning, thirsting, aching to connect with us. So please be conscious, aware of your physical heart. And if it works for you, take one hand, both hands, touch your heart. Envelop your heart with the palm of the hand or hands and feel it. Bond with it. And for a few moments, connect with the rhythm, the beat of the heart. And now, through the heart, listen to those beautiful words revealed to the Prophet Muhammad in a dream, where God, divinity, spirit, mystery tells each one of us. God says, I cannot be contained in the space of the earth. I cannot be contained in the space of the heavens, but I can be contained in the space of the pure, loving heart of my devotee. So for now, just be with that mystery, astonishing mystery, that divine heart is in human heart. Spirit is outside of us and also inside of us. The space of the heart is actually boundless, infinite. Just be with that mystery, please. And now as you focus on this boundless touchstone, the space of the heart, plant words of beauty. The Quran says, to God belong the most beautiful names. So Islamic spiritual teachers suggest that as you focus on the heart, can you say words with feeling, sincerity, humility, words like, I love you, or please help me to love you, and or I am so grateful, thank you. Or simply, please help me, I need help, I surrender to you. Any or all of those, or anything else which resonates within you, but unabashedly, no matter how awkward it feels, repeat those words deep inside this mysterious, boundless heart space. Again and again and again, please. I love you. Please help me to love you. Thank you. I'm so grateful. Please help me. I need help. I surrender to you. As you keep saying these words again and again, a magical, divine vibration filled with love, blessings, healing, empowerment is going from the tongue into the mouth, into the throat, deep into the chest, even deeper into the heart, even deeper into what is called the hidden, and then even deeper into what is called the hidden of the hidden, astonishingly loving us, blessing us, healing us, transforming us. And now stop saying anything at all, just be with your heart. And then if your hands are on the heart, just put your hands down. And one last step, as you focus on the heart, this magical heart space, which is boundless, from the depths of your heart, make an intention to pour out, to send out light and love, pouring out from the heart, radiating outwards. Simply gushing, pouring, radiating from the depths of our heart in an outward, expansive direction. Remembering that the more love and light we pour out, the more love and light we become filled up with. It's a law, ancient and inexhaustible. And one last time, pouring out through intention, light and love from the depths of our being in an outward, expansive direction. I'm going to sing a chant now. And with the chant, you can ever so gently open your eyes at your convenience. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. La ilaha illallahu. La ilaha illallahu.